I think Angel Reese, and I'm saying this with my chest out, I think she's quit on the Chicago Sky. She's been claiming a back injury basically since the All-Star break. And there's no details. Every day we hear that Angel Reese is day to day. And every week there's no update on what she's struggling with, what she's doing. There's nothing. There's no information about Angel Reese. I think she's quit on this season.
The city of Chicago is begging for answers, but all they're getting is silence. Their newest star, the player who was supposed to lead them into a new era, has simply vanished into thin air. The official reason is a back injury, labeled day-to-day. But after weeks of brutal losses, cryptic updates, and a total media blackout, fans are starting to believe the real injury isn't physical at all. They're whispering about a player who saw the ship sinking and decided to jump overboard.
Angel Reese! She might have tapped out, y'all. Angel Reese may have tapped out and quit on the Chicago Sky. Everybody is speculating. What is this back injury? What's going on? Hey, are you trying to pretend like you hurt because Caitlin Clark really is hurt? Wait. What's going on?
Prioritize her own brand over the team that depends on her. This is the story of a mysterious absence, a crumbling franchise, and the shocking evidence that suggests one of the WNBA's biggest names might have just quit on the entire season. What's really going on with Angel Reese? Let me know what you think is really happening in the comments below. It all started with a collapse that wasn't just a slump. It was a full-blown meltdown broadcast for the entire world to see. Game after game, the Chicago Sky looked less like a professional basketball team and more like a squad of amateurs getting their brains beat in on national television. The scoreboards weren't just showing losses. They were displaying margins of defeat so wide they felt like a public humiliation, a statement on the franchise's current state.
The second missing component in the WNBA right now is Angel Reese and her dozens of aliases. Has anyone seen Bayou Barbie lately? Where in the hell is Double Double Barbie? Where is the Me-Bound Clown? It has been weeks since I have heard anything about Angel Reese. She's becoming known as the Vanishing Barbie because no one can find.
3 games in just as many weeks, each one a deeper cut than the last. And right in the middle of the storm was Angel Reese, visibly struggling, her frustration mirroring that of every fan watching. The effort was there, but the results were catastrophic. And then, as if a switch was flipped, she was just gone. Vanished. The team's front office put out the vaguest possible statement, a masterpiece of non-information that cited a back injury, and deployed that infamous 2-word phrase that drives every sports fan crazy, day to day.
Angel Reese has been dealing with a back injury. That is the official reason for her mysterious absence. But there has been rampant speculation that this back injury isn't as serious as Angel Reese claims. And some believe that Angel Reese has quit on her team and quit on the season.
But here's where the red flags start waving frantically. Because in the language of professional sports, day-to-day has a specific meaning. It implies a minor, manageable issue, a tweak, a strain, something a player can work through a treatment, maybe missing a game or 2 tops. It absolutely does not mean disappearing from the lineup for almost a full month without another word. There were no medical details, no MRI results, no specifics on her rehab regimen, no estimated return date, just a void of information, a black hole of communication that the organization seemed perfectly fine with.
Bruh, you gotta remember, she quit in Unrivaled. She just stopped playing in Unrivaled. Said she was hurt, didn't show up for the championship game, didn't even show up and watch. Last season, she claimed her wrist was messed up, didn't finish playing in none of the games. Now, this year, she's saying this season, it's her back. It looked like she's not finishing playing in none of the games. The Sky needs you. The Chicago Sky, you guys are the gum on the bottom of the shoe of the league. They need Angel Reese to play in games. Angel, where you at? Where are you at, Angel?
This level of secrecy is a vacuum, and in the world of sports, a vacuum never stays empty for long. It gets filled with rumors, with speculation, and with the one question nobody at the Sky seems willing to answer: what are they really hiding? When you treat your fan base like they aren't worthy of a basic explanation, you invite them to draw their own, often far more damaging conclusions. But this sudden, unexplained exit isn't some isolated incident. in an otherwise spotless career.
Last 4 weeks, Angel Reese has played 3 games. I'm no expert in math, but that appears to be less than 1 game a week. Unsurprisingly, all 3 games Angel Reese played in, the Chicago Bravado lost by an average of 18 points. Translation, they got their ass kicked.
If you take a step back and look at Angel Reese's recent history, a disturbing and undeniable pattern begins to emerge, one that critics and fans alike can't unsee. Let's rewind to last season, her rookie year. The narrative was all about her fierce rivalry with Caitlin Clark, the race for Rookie of the Year. But as the season wore on and it became clear Clark was pulling ahead, Reese suddenly stopped playing, officially citing a wrist injury. While injuries are real, the timing raised eyebrows, with many pointing out it conveniently coincided with her falling definitively behind in that high-profile race.
Reese declined to travel to Indianapolis, and her coach came out and said something about, she's just focused on her rehab right now, and, she's day to day. We've never had an explanation on what caused the back injury, what's a time frame for her recovery. It's similar to so-and-so's back injury. This is something she struggled with here or there. All we've heard is day to day, and Angel Reese has disappeared.
Then fast forward to the inaugural season of the Unrivaled League, a huge, hyped-up deal for the sport that was supposed to showcase its biggest stars. Reese was a marquee name, a headliner. But when it came time for the championship game, the biggest moment of the new league's young life, she wasn't just absent from the court due to injury. She wasn't even in the building. She didn't show up to support her teammates, to be part of the event, to show face. That's more than an injury. That's a choice. And now, this current season, the pattern completes itself with almost predictable timing. The Sky are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. The losses are embarrassing and piling up, and like clockwork, another mysterious injury appears. This time a back issue shrouded in complete secrecy. 2, maybe even 3 seasons in a row, a trend has been established. When going gets tough, when the spotlight gets too hot, when losing becomes a norm, Angel Reese seems to get going right out the door.
Everybody is ablaze right now. Everybody's wondering, what is really going on with Angel Reese? Has she just flat out quit again? Has she quit on the Chicago Sky? Angel, you have to have some level of self-awareness here.
It's a trend that points towards a discomfort with adversity, and for a player who wants to be the face of a league, it's a reputation that's becoming impossible to ignore and even harder to defend. So if she's not on the court battling with her teammates, where exactly is she? That's $1 million question, and the answer is a large portion of the fan base absolutely furious, feeling like they've been sold a bill of goods. The picture becomes clear not by looking at the basketball court, but by looking at her social media feeds and public appearances.
She identified once they lost Vandersloot, their point guard, early in the year, and once they started getting their brains beat in, hey, we're not going to win anything this year. I'm not putting these L's on my resume. I'm going to have an excuse for the Chicago Sky potentially coming in with the worst or second worst record in the WNBA. These losses will not be on my record.
While her Chicago Sky teammates were back in the locker room, suiting up and mentally preparing for a major rivalry game against the Indiana Fever, a game that, despite the season's record, still matters to the city and the fans. Angel Reese took a separate trip to Indianapolis, but she wasn't there to play. She wasn't there to sit on the bench and support. She was there for one reason, to launch her new Reebok sneakers. In a move that can only be described as breathtakingly tone-deaf, she stood on what is essentially her rival's home court in Caitlin Clark City and delivered a now infamous line about taking over your trap, all in the service of marketing her new product.
Last year with the Chicago Sky, you quit. You threw in the towel. Once you realized you never stood a chance, to be honest, with Caitlin Clark for that Rookie of the Year. But once you realized your double streak was over, and it was over. She took over post-Olympic break. Once you realized it was done, you threw in the towel, said your wrist was hurting for the rest of the year. You threw in the towel and said your wrist was hurting for the rest of the year and didn't play again. This past the inaugural season of Unrivaled, you didn't even finish that season. You didn't even show up for the championship. No, not only did you not play, you didn't even show up to the game at all. people noticing a pattern with you. That's 2 seasons in a row.
The message was clear. This launch was a priority. A few weeks later, she was all over social media, hyping the September release, doing interviews, and even making bold comparisons about her potential impact to that of Michael Jordan himself. The energy and effort poured into her personal brand were palpable. They were through the roof. Meanwhile, the energy and presence devoted to her actual team, the ones suffering a historic losing streak, were completely non-existent. The optics are devastating beyond repair. It creates the undeniable image of a player who is perfectly healthy and available for photo shoots, promotional events, and sneaker launches, but who is somehow simultaneously too injured to answer the call when her team is getting destroyed night after night. It paints a picture of someone whose priorities are not just elsewhere, but are actively in conflict with the very concept of team loyalty and dedication.
Wondering if Angel Reese is in no rush to return because she doesn't want to be blamed for declining mainstream interest in the WNBA. We've been talking about this the past couple of weeks. What are the biggest storylines right now in the WNBA? Outside of AA batteries flying on the court, gift wrapped in plastic wiener, what is there to talk about? Since Caitlin Clark has been injured, which has damn near been the entire season, but mainly since the All-Star break, there has been minimal mainstream interest in pretend basketball.
When you break down the timeline of this entire situation, it doesn't just look bad from a public relations standpoint. It starts to look calculated, strategic, and deeply disrespectful to the fans who pay their hard-earned money for tickets and merchandise. Look at the cold, hard facts. Right before this disappearance, Reese played in 3 consecutive games. In those 3 games, the Sky didn't just lose. They were humiliated, losing by an average of 18 points. They were blown out, outclassed, and demoralized. Immediately after that brutal stretch, a stretch that weighed heavily on any competitor, she was sidelined with this vague, unexplained injury. The coincidence is so stark, it doesn't feel like an accident anymore. To many, it feels like an escape hatch was used, a way to avoid being on the court for what was sure to be more incoming damage. But the most telling part of this entire saga, the moment that truly exposed the questionable nature of this day-to-day status, was the one game she miraculously felt good enough to play. It wasn't a pivotal matchup against a conference leader. It wasn't a must-win game to keep faint playoff hopes alive. It was a game against the Washington Mystics. So what was the special occasion? The reason for her sudden recovery? It was because her grandmother was going to be in the stands for the first time. It was a family event. She was apparently healthy enough for a heartwarming family photo op and play for a personal audience, but she's been completely MIA for every other crucial gut-check game since. This singular action sends a message louder than any press release ever could. It suggests that personal milestones and appearances are deemed more important than the grueling, often unglamorous grind of the season. The very grind her teammates have no choice but to endure every single night. Fans aren't stupid. They receive that message loud and clear, and it has shattered any benefit of the doubt she might have had left. Perhaps the most damning element of this entire controversy, the one that fans and commentators absolutely cannot stop talking about, is the stark, night and day difference between how Angel Reese's situation is handled and how the Indiana Fever organization deals with their own superstar, Caitlin Clark. The contrast isn't subtle. It's a masterclass in how to handle a situation professionally versus how to amplify a crisis through silence. When Caitlin Clark gets hurt, and she has faced her own injuries this season, the Fever's front office is a model of transparency. They immediately tell you what the injury is. A sprained ankle, a concussion, they're specific. They give a realistic timeline for a reevaluation. They provide consistent updates on her progress. It's what a professional, respectful organization does for its fan base. It manages expectations and builds trust through honesty. Furthermore, Clark herself is almost always courtside for games she can't play in, wearing team gear, cheering on her teammates, signing autographs for fans, and staying visibly engaged with the franchise's journey. Now, hold that image in your mind and look at the situation in Chicago. Radio silence. A complete media blackout. Reese isn't on the bench supporting her team. She's not even seen in the arena. Her absence is total. The only time she personally showed up in Indiana was for that Reebok brand event, not the actual game. And this contrast becomes even more pointed when you consider the head-to-head record. The Fever have dominated the Sky this year, winning all 4 of their matchups. Every single time Reese has been a no-show for these rivalry games, it actively fuels the theory that she's strategically avoiding the direct on-court comparison. It looks like she's dodging the spotlight when it means having to face her biggest rival in what would almost certainly be another losing effort, a narrative she seems desperate to avoid for the sake of her brand. This whole mystery taps into a much larger problem brewing in the WNBA, a league that has been riding a wave of unprecedented attention, but is now showing some very real cracks in its foundation. Since the electric hype of the All-Star break began to fade, and with Caitlin Clark also dealing with her own injuries, the league's mainstream television ratings have started to slip in a noticeable way. That initial massive wave of interest, the one that felt like it could lift the entire sport to a new permanent level, is demonstrably cooling down. The casual viewers, the ones who tuned in for the cultural moment and the rookie rivalry drama, are the first to leave when that drama isn't front and center every single night. Games that were pulling in record-breaking numbers just a month or two ago are now settling back into a range that, while still improved from previous years, signals a concerning trend for the league's momentum. This creates a precarious environment for every star player, but especially for one like Angel Reese, whose brand is built on being a central character in that ongoing drama. And now, you have to ask yourself a very pointed, strategic question. If Angel Reese was actually on the court during this noticeable rating slide, who would inevitably get a significant portion of the blame in the court of public opinion? The narrative, fair or not, would be swift and brutal. Pundits and fans would immediately point to her and claim she can't draw viewers on her own, that her appeal isn't as strong as everyone hypothesized, and that without the direct head-to-head clash with Clark, she isn't the ratings magnet she was projected to be. The conversation would shift from her potential to her perceived shortcomings. It would become about what she isn't delivering rather than what she could deliver. But by being mysteriously sidelined, she artfully dodges an entire damaging conversation. She completely sidesteps the narrative. While the league worries about its viewership numbers, the focus on Reese remains squarely on her brand, her new sneakers, her potential, and the mystery of her absence, not on any quantifiable failure to move a needle. She exists in the realm of what if, instead of the harsh reality of what is. Let's look at that reality for a moment. The last Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever game broadcast on ABC, the marquee matchup that she conspicuously skipped, drew 1.3 million viewers. On the surface, that's a great number for the WNBA historically. But context is everything. It was the single least watched game between these two specific teams all season long. The previous matchups, the ones she played in during that initial media frenzy, were pulling in numbers that shattered records. So this game, without her, represents a significant drop-off. And who was the face of that disappointing, downtrending number? It certainly wasn't Angel Reese. She was completely insulated from any association with that decline. By not playing, she avoided being a headline on sports shows the next day with analysts questioning if her star power was already waning. That's not a random coincidence. It has all the markings of a calculated strategy to protect a brand that is still in its most fragile and lucrative growth phase. Think about the timing of her Reebok sneaker launch, which happened right in the middle of all this. It's a perfect distraction, a shiny new object for the media and her fans to focus on. Instead of headlines reading Reese's return fails to boost ratings, they were about her business savvy and her bold claims about building an empire. The conversation was about her ambition, not her absence. About her future, not her team's present failures. This is a very modern form of reputation management. In today's attention economy, it's often more valuable to control the mystery than to face a potentially unflattering truth. By remaining an enigma, she keeps everyone guessing and talking, which in its own way maintains her relevance even while she isn't contributing on the court. Furthermore, this strategy allows her supporters to defend her with the shield of the unknown. They can rightly say, you don't know what's really going on with her injury, which is true. But that very lack of knowledge is the weapon being used. It prevents any definitive conclusions from being drawn about her impact on viewership, allowing her brand to exist in a state of hypothetical greatness, rather than being measured by the current, less flattering metrics. It's a brilliant, if cynical, maneuver. She isn't just avoiding losses on the basketball court. She's avoiding any loss of cultural cachet. She's ensuring that her name isn't tarnished by being attached to a sinking ship, whether that ship is the Chicago Sky season or the WNBA's slightly deflating ratings bubble. This approach, however, comes with massive long-term risk. While it might protect her in the short term, it fundamentally erodes the trust of the core basketball fan. These are the fans who watch every game, who buy the jerseys, and who value accountability above all else. They see a player who shows up for the photo ops, but not for the grind, for the sneaker launch, but not for the rivalry game. They see a player who seems more committed to her own narrative than to her team's fight. And these core fans are the bedrock of any sustainable sports league. You alienate them at your peril. The very strategy that protects her brand from the casual viewer's fleeting opinion might be slowly poisoning her reputation with the dedicated fans whose support she will need for the long haul. It's a high-stakes gamble, prioritizing perception over production and hoping that the buzz from her business ventures will be loud enough to drown out the growing whispers about her commitment to the game itself. In the end, the league's ratings problem is a storm. And by staying on the sidelines, Angel Reese isn't just avoiding the rain. She's making sure no one can blame her if the whole thing floods. In the end, this isn't really about a back injury. It's about trust. The Chicago Sky, by treating their fans like they're not worthy of a basic explanation, have shattered that trust. They've allowed a vacuum of information to be filled with theories. And the loudest theory is the most damaging one, that their star player quit on them. The evidence is all there. The pattern of walking away, the focus on branding over basketball, the convenient timing, and the glaring contrast with a player who embodies availability. Angel Reese wants to be seen as a face of the league, a cultural icon. But true icons don't disappear when her team is at its lowest point. They fight, they lead, they show up. The question is no longer when she's coming back, but if she ever really wanted to be there in the first place. What do you believe? Let us know down in the comments. And for more deep dives into the stories sports leagues don't want you to hear, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out.